Hey guys, this is John, bringing back a long lost series with this video, climbing the tactics training ladder. I went back and checked. The last time I added a video to this playlist was October of 2016. So we're talking a year and a half ago since I did a proper tactics session on camera for you guys. Fortunately, my stats have remained the same. So I still have my stats that I ended that last video with on chess.com. This is the chess.com tactics trainer. We can see them here. I've attempted 188 problems. I've got 184 of them correct and 4 of them wrong. And that leads into something that I've been talking about at the outset of all these videos. I'm solving for accuracy as much as possible. I'm trying to get these problems right. I'm not as worried about how fast I can do them. I do think solving for speed, especially if you're an advanced player, is important. But for most of you guys, it's more important to try to get the problems right and not stress over the time. However, one thing I will say, I think you should set a hard cap on the maximum amount of time per problem. I would say 10 minutes. If you're sitting there looking at a problem for any more than 10 minutes, I think its usefulness to you is decreasing quite rapidly at that point. So I would just play your best guess, and whatever happens, happens. Maybe you'll get it right, probably you'll get it wrong. Because when you're practicing your tactics, probably you're training for actual games, and there's a famous rule in chess that you really shouldn't spend more than 10 minutes on a given move in a game, like hardly ever, unless it's like some very rare, sharp position. So I think we should follow the same philosophy when we're solving tactics. I will say I'm going to set a 45-minute timer, an overall timer for this session. In the past year and a half, and really for longer than that, working as a chess coach, has just been impressed upon me how important it is to set limits on what you're doing and work within a time frame or a certain number of games if you're playing a lot in online servers, because it's just so easy in chess. I mean, we get so wrapped up in playing a game or doing tactics, whatever, that we lose track of time, and often our play and our solving just becomes sloppy as a result. So I'm a very firm believer in not going overboard, although you guys have seen me do that in some of my fun Twitch streams and stuff. Not playing too many games in the session. You really want to avoid that stuff. So I'm going to set a 45-minute timer. I just have it open here on another, I just Googled timer basically, and I'm going to use the Google timer. And I think that's all I'm going to cover. I am going to look at the problems a little bit afterwards if I have any questions. So I'm going to just go from problem to problem here in this session. So let's get started. First problem here, start the clock. Okay. So black playing knight d3. There's a lot of pressure against this g7 pawn, and immediately I see a motif that I can play to try to take advantage of it. That move is queen h6. By the way, I should say, of course, if you want to try to solve these before I tackle them, like, definitely feel free to do that and pause the video to do it, because most likely I'll start talking about the problem right away. So let's move queen h6, because if black takes it, I mate him. And otherwise, I mean, black has a check here, but just king g1. And then if knight h3, I can play king h2, for instance. Yeah, I think that's the answer. Because black can't simultaneously eliminate the knight and the bishop. So that's why that problem was working. Nice one there. Good one to start off. Okay, queen f5. Knight f6 would be checkmate if it weren't for the queen. I'm therefore looking at deflection ideas. Even moves like rook e5 come to mind. Because if queen takes, there's queen g4 check. But rook e5, knight e5 doesn't seem to be leading to anything. g4 is another deflection move, but looks like black can just take that with check. I do have this hanging rook. And by the way, if you're new to solving tactics, I would definitely not look at this video first, as tempting as it may be. I would go and look at some very beginning videos that I made for this series, because I talk about the absolute basic things you should be looking at in every position, every tactical position, your forcing moves, your checks, captures, threats, all that good stuff. So I'm getting into some of the higher rated problems, so I'm not going to be verbalizing that stuff as much. But I'm, of course, still looking and scanning for forcing moves as much as possible. So yeah, g4 I'm ruling out. Rook e5, I don't see a follow-up after knight takes e5. Looks to me like we're going to have to move the rook. If this were a blitz game, I think rook g3 would be the move I'd make. Rook e4 is also interesting. Could try rook e4. looking to prop up the attack on the g4 square. This bishop is hanging on h6, though. So how does that interplay with everything? I mean, this bishop is under attack, too. There's a lot going on in this position. Rook e4 or rook e3 definitely catch my eye, but maybe black can just play knight takes h6 against those. Although, admittedly, if rook e3, let's say, knight takes h6, rook g3 check, and then the king will be forced onto the f-file, and I can play rook f3. So I'd say right now rook e3 is my top candidate move. It also defends the knight on h5, which is under attack. But if I move my rook, my queen will be defending that knight. Ah, okay. I'm seeing an idea I should have seen sooner, probably. So if this queen reaches g4, I can deflect black's queen and play knight f6 mate. So I think rook e8 is going to do it. Just a forcing continuation. Rook e8, rook takes e8, queen g4, queen takes g4, knight f6 mate. Black can block on g6 with the queen, but it doesn't matter. As long as I control f8, and as long as my knight is landing on f6. Yeah, there's also rook e8, bishop f8, but it's the same thing. That's it. Very attractive combination. Sacrifice of the rook and then the queen. Okay, so you can see I only gained 1 rating point from that. Chess.com has an algorithm and tells you how many points you're going to get out of it, so 56%, but I'm happy that I solved that. Rating aside. Okay, here we're down a piece. We've got some obvious checks on a4 and a3, but it looks like the king is running, so b5 would be nice, but also queen takes a2 is a threat, so I don't think we have time for that. I think I should look at the checks, therefore. Probably the queen check, the rook check on a3, there's king b2. So check on a3 or a4. Let's say a4, because that gives me the c6 square to work with as well, maybe even d7. So queen a4, king c4. Let's say, I think at that point either rook c2 or queen c6. Queen c6, king b3. We check on c3, there's king takes a2, that doesn't lead to anything. So let's say queen a4, king to c4, rook c2 check. If queen takes c2, I think I'm happy. That should be just a win. I'm going to pick up the d3 pawn next. So queen a4, king c4, rook c2, king d5. And then I have checks on c6 or d7. Ooh, it's pretty close to mate, but not quite. Say check on c6, king takes e5. It's kind of running away to f4, so queen c7 check, king takes d4. Queen c3, drive the king forward. King d5, queen takes d3 check, getting very deep in the line at that point. Knight d4, queen c4. That doesn't seem like it's going to work out. So I'm going to put queen a4 on the back burner for a second. Queen a3, king c4 once again. Queen c3 check, king d5. It just looks to me like the queen is less flexible on a3. That's why I initially looked at queen a4. Huh. Oh, duh. You guys are probably laughing at me. There's queen f7 here all along. Queen f7, unusual motif, defending the rook. And that's just checkmate. Okay. That's a hard-earned single point once again. Queen f7. How many of you guys saw that before I did? You can write in the comments if you did. So it took me 2 minutes and 34 seconds. But, yeah, I mean, that's what sometimes happens in positions. You look at a move forever and, or, in this case, I was looking at queen a4, queen a3, got so fixated on it, but then it dawned on me, hey, I actually have this other check, this other forcing move. This position I feel like I've seen before. Maybe not on this tactics trainer, but, yeah, I'm 99% sure I've solved this position before. Some weird mating net with white down material. Down a rook for a queen. Just making sure that my capture is correct. I'm always paranoid I'm going to do one of these videos, like solve problems for 45 minutes or play a game and the capture was off the whole time. Yeah, okay, so the king is trying to run to f5. Obviously, we'd like to play knight e3 mate, but there's this little problem of the queen. So I'm looking at deflection ideas. Like, could we start with rook a4? There's not a lot of squares on that diagonal that the black queen can safely go to. In fact, only c5 to continue guarding e3. So let's say rook a4, queen c5, rook c4, still chasing the queen, queen a7. Then I can attack the queen from c7, so rook c7 and queen d4. Yes, then rook g7. If queen takes g7, knight e3's mate. If king f5, rook g5. Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah. Oh, bummer. Is it rook b7 right away? It must be. I messed that up. I'm going to look at that one at the end. All right. Next tactic. Take on c7. Now I have to shake it off. Just like in a game, right? You mess up a move, you think you did something wrong. You might be dwelling on it, but you got to shake it off. Channel my inner Taylor Swift. So I want to check on the back rank, but white's escaping here. But then we have rook takes f2, right? So if rook g1, white must play king d2. And then there's bishop g5. Bishop g5 is key. And then white would have to go to... Yeah, there's not really anything white could do. Because if they go back to e2, rook takes f2. If they block on f4, we can just play bishop takes f4 check. Yeah, I think that's it. Check. King d2, bishop g5. Can't go to c1 or c3. He's going to have to go to e2 soon. All right. Check. Check. This is the key move. Otherwise, white might survive. Is there anything faster here that I'm overlooking? Nah. And checkmate. All right. Got 10 points on that one. And just rating-wise, again, I'm not like overall concerned about it, but it's just a quick barometer of how you're doing, right? Shouldn't put too much emphasis on it. Okay. White's king looks like it could be exposed in the center. But there is this issue down the a file. White's queen looks weird on a4. Bishop c2. That pins the knight. That looks like a real tough move to deal with. Yeah, I don't see anything wrong with bishop c2. Be hard to believe that there's a better move than that here. No, I think bishop c2's got to be correct. Let's go with that. Okay, take. I should have calculated that move. I actually didn't see that that was possible, that the queen would be under attack. So that's a mistake on my part. So I got a little lucky. Queen takes e5 can be played. And then if queen takes c2, but there's knight takes c2. Knight takes c2, defending the rook in the corner. We have a check on c3, king e3, bishop c5, e3, and then rook d2. Yeah, that should work. You can play rook takes d4, but then queen takes c2, it somehow feels like white is consolidating. And if bishop takes a4, knight takes e6, I don't see anything convincing there. So yeah, I think I'm going to go for queen takes e5. Trying to win a piece. Yeah. Okay, and they simply take it. I was expecting that other line to play out. All right, let's keep going. Yikes, this does not look like fun for white. White's surely losing this unless knight c6 or something even faster is working out, like queen takes c7. But knight c6 is my first instinct. Knight c6, bishop takes, forced. Otherwise, we bring the heat down on d8. So bishop takes, rook takes d8. Let's say knight takes d8, rook takes d8, king b7. And how are we going to mate him? Is it queen takes c6, king takes c6, bishop f3 check, drive the king forward? Yes, because we have knight d3 at the end. Maybe. Not if the knight's still on f4. It's also b4 check. Ooh, okay, let's see. Knight c6, bishop takes c6, rook takes d8, knight takes d8, rook takes d8 check, king b7. Might be other moves, but let's say most forcing. Queen takes c6 check, king takes c6, bishop f3. Knight d5 just gives up the knight and it's going to get mated, I think. It feels like it should get mated. So let's say king c5. King c5. There's b4 check, king c4. But then the knight is covering e2 and also d5. There doesn't seem to be any more good checks. So maybe not b4 check. Could play knight d3. Knight takes d3. Is there rook takes rook d5 then? Rook d5, king c6. Rook takes d3, king back to c5. There's got to be mate there somewhere. So many pieces that are being lost along the way. Exchange captured. Oh, that's got to be mate, right? Let's go through this line one more time. Knight c6, bishop takes c6, rook takes d8, knight takes d8, rook takes d8 check, king b7, queen takes c6 check, king takes c6, bishop f3, king c5, knight d3, knight takes d3, only move. Rook d5 check, king c6, only move. Let's say rook takes d3, king back to c5. And then I think b4 check, king c4, and then finally bishop d5. Finally the bishop gets there. And that's mate. My only fear is there might be something faster than that along the way, but I think that's the crux of this variation. And now I'm just going to check to see if there's any other moves I'm missing along the way, or easier, even more blatant stuff. But queen takes c7 I mentioned initially. The thing I don't like about that is black doesn't even have to take the queen. Taking the queen actually, I think, is fine, but even king a8 is probably okay there. Well, maybe. But no, I think knight c6, I mean, yeah, that's the line. Let's do it. I mean, king b7 is also an option here, but black should take the rook just to eliminate some options. Take. Okay, I want to take away the b7 square. I don't want him to run. Okay, now here's where I was saying knight d3. I'm just going to very quickly see if there's anything faster. But I see forced mate after knight d3, so I shouldn't really second guess myself. Yeah. Check. And now check here. And solved. Okay, it didn't even make me go further than that with king c6. Maybe I'll demonstrate that at the end, the full solution. Okay, here we can't go to c1 because of queen c2 mate. So our options are blocking or playing king c3. I mean, blocking would be the obvious thing to me. because we've got threats against black's king. But black can play queen takes e2 and try to swap down at least. Still feels like black should be losing that. King c3, queen c2 check is probably going to be the answer. And then we got to flee to d4. That seems insanely risky. I mean, queen f2, for instance. Nah, the king is just like marching up the board. I don't think that makes any sense. So I think bishop e2, I would be okay with that endgame. And sometimes you feel like that's not really what you're looking for in a tactics problem, offering to go into a winning, endgame up a few pawns or something, but I don't think king c3, queen c2 check, king d4, and then moves like, queen f2 check or rook check. Probably queen f2, actually, because I don't think you want the king coming back to e3. No, that looks so risky. Maybe, though, but isn't bishop e2 just nice and tidy win? Well, okay, let's check one more time. King c3, queen c2 check, king d4. If queen takes b2, then king e3. The king's safe. White's attack is going to carry the day, I think. So queen f2, like I was saying, and then king e5 or king d5. I mean, it looks just crazy. No, we're not going to do that. And queen e2 is not an option. We're playing bishop e2. Yeah, take now. Okay. Only gain 1 point on that one. Kind of a weird problem, but I guess they were just trying to tempt you into king c3 or king c1. Queen g3. So f4 obviously is a move we got to consider because that strands this knight on g5. Can white even defend the knight after that? That looks like it's straight winning a piece. I like how this timer is a little less obvious, by the way. You guys actually can't even see that timer on your end, so that's good. But there's a timer right below here where my webcam is. Per problem. Yeah, f4. How does white avoid losing a piece after f4? I don't see it. Just take this piece. Okay. White's king on the run. Black's down a rook. Check on d6, most obvious move. So check on e3, but white just takes it. So if we check on d6, where's the king going to run? c4 or c2? If c4, queen c6, king back to d3 or b3, queen c3, that's looking like it's going to be mate very soon. Yes, I see mate. So queen d6, king c2 is the only branch left. Probably knight d4 at that point. Trying to get him on a square where I can take the b4 pawn with check. Oh no, I should still check on c6. Yeah, still check on c6. And he's either going to lose his queen or get mated. Yeah, what else could it be here? I don't think there's really any other moves to seriously consider. I'm going for this one. Yeah, and now check here. I think just knight here. There's also knight a3 or even queen takes e4, but there's this bishop block. If knight a3, king b2. Don't see mate. Bishop d4, queen takes d4, queen takes c2, or queen c2, king takes a3, no mate. So I think just knight c3. Okay. Keep pressing forward here. Hanging rook on a7. But then my bishop on f4 drops. There's also a knight that's under attack twice on b8. I can take it either way. I can take it with the bishop and save the bishop. Also, this queen looks like it's in bad shape. I almost want to try to trap this queen. Material as it stands now is almost equal. Blacks have a pawn in the current position. I mean, hard to argue with bishop takes b8. Yeah, because then even if the rook moves away somewhere, you might even have bishop e2. So I think knight takes a7, queen takes f4 is a little less clear. Knight takes b8, queen takes f4. So, yeah, let's go bishop takes b8. Okay. Stingy with the points. Very slowly gaining points, but, you know, don't be discouraged if it's not as quick as you'd like. Queen d4. Okay, so there's this bishop takes a6 idea in this type of position. If black captures, they get mated, queen c6. So that is what my eye is immediately drawn to. Kind of like Bowden's mate, famous mating pattern. There's an immediate threat on b7 and queen c6 mate. So I don't think black's surviving that one. I could also invert the move order, right? Like, that's important. I almost played bishop takes a6, but there's queen c6 check right away, even more forcing. It's funny, because I mentioned Bowden's mate. That's Bowden's mate. Queen c6, yeah, he has to take it. And then bishop takes a6 is checkmate. It's almost too smart for my own good there, John. Bowden's mate. You heard it here first. Or maybe not. All right. Knight takes a7. If we take on c3, white takes on c8. And what then? I see some potential like rook takes h3 business. Rook takes c3, knight takes c8, bishop, let's say f4. Bishop f4 is compelling. Guards the d6 square, so stops any queen d6 bailout stuff. Threatens rook takes h3. It's pretty annoying. Let's say king g1 at that point. I feel like the attack should be decisive. Rook g2. Yeah, rook g2. This bishop f4 move could be key. Rook takes c3. Don't have to worry about queen takes c8, so knight takes c8, bishop f4. There's no good checks for white. Threatening rook takes h3 followed by bishop e3. That should be winning if we get it in. So king g1, rook c2. Yeah, and white can't use their queen to help in the defense. I'm going for that. Okay, got that one. Endgame. I like endgames. King d4, keep the king 2 squares away diagonally from the knight. Often good if you're trying to evade a knight's checks. And then we're threatening... almost threatening d2. Not quite. I guess we're threatening king e... well... what are we threatening? This one almost seems like process of elimination, because king d4 is so incredibly obvious here. I don't know, honestly, in a game I would really think twice about it, especially if time was at all a concern, as it often is at this stage of the game. So let's just say king d4, a5. You know, we'll make a move for white. Because then d2, king e2... it's not quite winning. So I guess knight e3 check, king e1, and then king c3. Yeah, and then my knight controls d5. If knight a4, there's king c2. Okay. Going with that. Yeah, I think king d4. I mean, same principle. So now knight e3, king e1 must be played. King c3, trying to escort the pawn. Knight a4 check, king c2, again staying 2 squares away diagonally from the knight. I mean, there's knight b2 in that position. It seems far-fetched that would work, though. Okay, let's see. One more second here. 'Cause if king e3, there's a knight check. Same with king c3, so I'm drawn to moving this knight, especially with check to control d5. Knight e3, king e1, king c3, knight a4, king c2, just this knight b2 move. d2 check, king e2. There's knight c4, but then knight d1. Suddenly, white is somehow defending that. Knight e3, king e1, king c3, knight a4, king c2, knight b2. Take the knight, king d2, really? It feels like that should just be losing, but admittedly, white's going to win the d3 pawn at that point. And I'm not 100% sure about some of these endgames where white's king is in the center of the board, 3 versus 3, but black has to waste time taking the other a pawn. I think that is winning for black, though. And white's a pawn is fairly fast, too, so we kind of have to go for this line. I don't see any other viable alternatives. Unless I'm missing something with d2, but I don't think so. d2, just king e2. King c3, knight d5. Yeah, I'm going to go for this one. Okay, so it played knight b2, so it's going to challenge me in this position. Ah, knight g2. Is that what I was missing all along? Knight g2, king f2. Take, but then they can run the pawn. a6, d2, a7, queen, queen. Can almost think about trying to mate white there. Knight g2 I didn't see until this moment. I don't know if it's the best move, but that's definitely coming into consideration. Knight g2, king f2. King f2 is, I think, absolutely forced. Otherwise, we're queening with check in too many lines. So king f2. Take on b2. a6, d2, a7, queen, queen. But it's black's move. So queen d2 check. Queen d2 check. I think king f1 runs into knight e3. That's going to be mate. So king g1 is forced. King g1, knight e3. Our king can escape the checks there. Okay, so knight g2 is looking very promising. Leads to this queen versus queen endgame with black having a knight, though, and white's king on the chopping block. But again, I'm just worried I'm missing something even easier. But again, if king takes b2, king d2, I don't know that that's that clear. We can swoop back and win the a5 pawn, but white's king gets very active and just makes a beeline for the kingside pawns. Yeah, I'm going to go knight g2. I'm going for this line. And I could play d2 here, but I don't think it matters. d2, a6. We still got to take a pit stop and take the knight. Yeah, that doesn't matter, so take. Okay, it didn't press us further. Okay, interesting problem on that one. Here, pressure on this pinned f6 knight. Queen f3 increases the pressure, but maybe just king g7. E5. E5 is an interesting idea. Making way for the queen to come to g6. E5, once you spot that move, that's hard to resist. I think that's just flat out strong. Yeah, that's crushing. That opens all the lines. And attacks the pin knight. Take. And the eagle is going to land. Bishop takes f6, just wins the queen. Yeah, let's just go for that. No need to calculate queen takes h6 or anything. All right, moving on up. About 11 minutes left of solving. Check on h2, king g1. Rook g6, threatening mate. But white is ready to take the bishop on d6, very important. Got to look at the full board. White has that threat. Even though it's very easy to just want to look at the king side only, we got to keep that in mind. White is banking on bishop takes d6. Ah, there's rook g4. Rook g4, drive the king to the h file. And that could be fatal. Rook g4. I'm going to look at both king moves. King h3, king h1. King h3, rook takes g5. King h4, I think, is forced at that point. Rook g2, maybe. That feels very much losing for white. So rook g4, let's say king h1. Then the idea is rook takes g5, bishop takes d6, and the bishop can come back to h2. But simply rook g4, king h1, take g5, take d6, pawn takes d6. Yeah, and white's still staring down the barrel of rook h6. I mean, yet another move is rook g6. Rook g6 trying for rook takes g5. That looks a little less convincing, though. Maybe white moves this rook and tries to run away with the king. I like rook g5, or rook g4 rather, because it keeps that king boxed in on the h file really nicely. So rook g4, king h3, rook takes g5, king h4. Rook g2, king h3. Yeah, and then there's rook h2, rook g6. That's over. Okay. Threaten mate. And this check. And this is mate. Black attacking with the queen and bishop only. But that's pretty compelling, especially if we check from d5, because I want to keep this rook on h1, this potentially undefended rook under attack. If the king goes to e3 or c3, it's mate on d4. So the king has to go to the back rank, and then we pick up the rook with check. Maybe pick up the other rook too. White has some checks of their own, though admittedly. So just figuring out what the best square is to check. So if we pick up the rook on h1 and get the same position after queen d5, but with white minus the rook, then white can't go to c1 because of queen d2 mate. So they'd have to go to e1. Ah, yeah, then it's easy. Then we're checking on the e file and playing queen e2. Can they run to... Nah, running to c3 should not work. Yeah, that doesn't work for white. Okay, yeah, and it didn't even go further. Sometimes I don't like it when the problems end that quickly. In fact, most of the time I don't. So I want to demonstrate the whole line. E2, that pawn is on the verge of queening. We have a pawn that's also on the verge of queening. But f7, king g7 can be played. So I think rook e7 or rook a1 are the obvious moves. Don't like rook a1, that's very passive. And black has the f-pawn ready to run too. This might be a white to move and draw position. I'm already looking for stalemate ideas. Like rook e7, let's say f2. No, but then on f7, there's even just queen on f1. Queen on f8, queen takes. Not looking like a stalemate there. And I'm not even certain yet if white should be playing for a draw, but yeah, those two pawns look quite dangerous. Okay, let's start with f7. I mean, that's the most straightforward. So f7, king g7. Kind of stuck then, though. f8 queen doesn't seem to make sense yet. King moves make no sense. So obviously it has to be a rook or a pawn move, but I'm not seeing anything with f7 after king g7. So I'm going back to rook e7 or rook a1 even, move that I said was really passive. So rook e7, f2. f7. And I see stalemate if black plays king g7 there, but what if just queen on f1, simultaneously guarding f8? Rook e6. Rook e6, king g7, queen. No, that's not working. What's up with this problem? Okay, rook a1, as much as I don't want to play that move, I'm going to look at it. Because then, yeah, rook a1, we're looking to play king g3 or something next and put the king on f2. That looks like a draw. So rook a1, f2 will be played. Then if king takes g2, e1 queen, that's losing. It's got to be losing. So rook a1, f2. Maybe f7 directly. But again, what happens if black simply queens there? Just don't see the stalemates working out. In so many lines, it seems white just has g3 and g1 available for the king. You don't want it available. I'm at 5 minutes on this problem. So not yet close to the 10-minute cap I set, but I'd like to figure something out here. I mean, I can't get down to king and queen against king and rook. That's a theoretical loss for the side with the rook. So like rook e7, f2, rook takes e2, f1 queen, rook takes g2, queen takes f6. That's winning for black. Barring a stalemate, I'm not saying, but... okay. What if we change up this move order? f7, king g7, what if then rook e7? Yeah, because if I play f7 right away, black must play king g7. I established that early on, but I didn't make that connection for a second. So f7, king g7, then rook e7. There's moves like king f8 there even. But let's look at f2. Because I think on f2 it works. f2, I play f8 queen. King takes f8. Rook takes e2. f1 queen. And then this rook f2 move. Rook f2 is key, I think. Forced queen takes f2. And then g3 and g1 are simultaneously covered by the black queen. Stalemate. So f7, king g7, rook e7. What if king f8, though? That's probably the same. Rook e3. Yeah, rook e3, and then if f2, we can go rook e8 check, make black take the pawn. King takes f7, rook takes e2, f1 queen, rook f2 is still working. So f7, king g7, rook e7, king f8, rook e3. If black doesn't take the pawn at that point, we're setting up this blockade I mentioned with king g3 or king g1. The pawns are going to be stuck. Probably eventually sacrifice the rook. That is my timer for the 45 minutes. No, I'm not baking a cake. So yeah, f7 I think is what I'm going to do. Bring the rook over. And it's going to play the most direct line. So I want to play f8 queen here first, right? Yeah, I think I do. f8 queen. Takes. Yeah. And that's a nice move to play. Oh, we don't even get the stalemate at the end. Queen takes f2 stalemate. But all right, so I wrapped up the session right as I got done with that problem. Gained some rating points this session. Glad to see that. But yeah, on the whole, just looking at how I'm solving these problems, the process. You know, like just like the 76ers, trust the process. I'm trying to give you guys a model of what you can work with. That's the whole point of these videos, like all videos I'm making for you guys. I want you guys to become better chess players, and I hope that I can demonstrate some of my knowledge and things I've learned along the way, and things I'm still learning, to be honest. So let's look at the raw stats for this session, and then maybe go back and take a look at a couple problems. Been a while since I did this, so I just want to make sure I get to the right mode, or the right view here. I can retry it. I can analyze that. First of all, I just want to see how many I did. I think if I click out here, this should do it. But there should be like a breakdown. Stats. Yeah, here we go. Can you guys see that? Yeah, here we go. So, as I said, I've been dormant on the chess.com tactics trainer since October of 2016, but we just started this back up, and I got in quite a few problems. How many is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 problems. And I got that one wrong. I think that's the most obvious one to go back and look at. Some kind of surprising ones where the solution ended up being far simpler than I thought it would be, and probably some of you guys were screaming. Like, again, you guys can't really see it from this view, but like this problem is a good example. I'll just click on it. So this is the one where white started with king b3. And I was spending initially all my time looking at queen a4 and queen a3. But in fact, the answer was just queen f7. I mean, that happens sometimes when you're analyzing and when you're playing a game. Like, the solution is just staring at you. But it's an unusual move. I mean, most people are going to be looking down the a file here because black has 3 different checks down the a file to consider. And they all appear to force the white king out. But I just wasn't really seeing that leading to anything. But you can't get married too much to a single line, especially if it's not leading you in the right direction. You got to be willing to switch up the variations. So I'm glad I saw rook f7, or queen f7 rather there. Let's look at this one. This is the one where I said that I had seen the idea before and the exact problem before. It started with black taking this rook. So I played rook a4 here. Why is rook a4 wrong? I think rook b7 is the better move. I think that's... Maybe it's just the case that rook b7 is faster, but why is rook a4 wrong? So my idea was rook a4, queen c5, rook c4, queen a7, rook c7. And then if queen d4, rook g7, check. Can I click in and analyze that one? Yeah, analysis. So yeah, here rook b7, I see the engine right away is saying is the best move. So that means rook a4 is not correct. I want to see if I can figure out why without looking at the engine yet. Rook a4, queen c5, rook c4. Really thought that was working. Oh, black can just play queen takes d5 in that position. Yeah. So this line is definitely not working. Rook here, here. Yeah, and if I play this brilliant rook c4 idea, queen takes d5. You know what's funny? And I don't mean to make this sound like an excuse at all, but have you guys ever noticed this phenomenon in chess where you're sometimes actually more likely to make a mistake because you think you know something about a position? This often happens with openings. Like you get your openings lines confused, and you make an assumption about a position that you believe you've seen before, but in fact you're just playing a bad move and you're not adjusting properly. And if you hadn't had that little bit of knowledge, you might have actually come up with a much better move. I almost feel like that's what happened here, because I knew that the idea was something like divert the queen from e3, this pendulum maneuver with the rook. But once I saw rook a4, I just focused exclusively on that. I didn't even think about this, because in this case the knight does survive. So yeah, the main idea is this checkmate. And if queen d4, we have rook g7 check. Try to force the queen to take it so we can play knight e3. And if this, then this. That's also a position I saw in my head via the rook a4 move, but it just wasn't working because I lose the knight on d5. So, okay. Let's go back to that stats page. Check any other problems of note. That one was easy. This one, I'm not completely happy with the fact that I did not notice after bishop c2 that knight takes d4 is possible. Remember that? I mean, I pretty much just thought bishop c2 was winning. Didn't even occur to me that this was a thing. Yeah, and then the problem ended here. I should show, though, what I was considering. So if instead in this position, after queen takes e5, black trying to win a piece, if instead white took with the knight here, I was planning, so this does defend the rook in a corner. I was planning queen c3 here, and then check, force e3, and then get the rook down to d2, and we pick up the knight. That's crushing. Yeah, computer says minus 15 and climbing. So, you know, problem cut off a little early there, but still good. This one, that was a long problem. You guys remember this one? Where the answer was knight c6 check, and then swoop in on d8. This was a nice piece of calculation. You know, the calculation I was doing here looks impressive, but really any good player can do this because all of these moves are forced. There's not really any deviations that you have to consider from black's part. So you're playing forcing moves, you're playing checks the whole time. I mean, I briefly thought, well, what if black does not play knight takes d8 here, plays king b7 right away, but that's not going to change a thing. If anything, that just makes it easier for white because white has 2 rooks instead of 1 in the attack. So once you get good at visualization, you can play out long variations, you calculate long variations in your head like this. Yeah, and the problem wrapped up here, but I was going a little further because you always want to, as much as possible. I guess I got to click into the analysis board to do this. Yeah, so knight d3 here, check here. I was going to play rook takes here, and then what was it, b4. Yeah, b4, yep, that's made in 2. Kind of don't like that the computer's toggled on initially. I wonder if I pause it, if it'll be on in the other problems too. We'll find out. So that was a nice little problem there, some long calculation. That one was the bishop e2 block thing. That was an easy problem. This was pretty easy. This one was about not being greedy, playing bishop takes b8. Here's where I almost messed up the Boden's mate because I got too fancy, despite even talking about Boden's mate. Here, bishop f4 was nice. Yeah, this one was also, I think, worth pursuing a little further. I got to mention this to Danny. I definitely don't like that when you click into it, the analysis engine is by default there because it's too tempting to look at it. I want to know if what I calculated actually works. I want to see the moves played out before adding the engine, just having the option to add the engine. So it started here. Yeah, king d4, real good rule of thumb. Keep the king 2 squares away diagonally from a knight if you're trying to escape the checks. And it took me a little while to establish that knight e3 was best, but the position I was most focused on in my analysis was this one. Because it seems like black should just be winning easily here, but it's not so simple. Because if we take the knight, then king d2, and the knight really isn't under attack here. Because if king takes e3, black would win with king c2. Well, winning is maybe harsh because white's a pawn is running, but the main point is white's going to eliminate the d pawn, and black has to think about this. And I could try to calculate something like this, but just on instinct, it looks like white's king is going to work its way in, and we always got to take a timeout to get this pawn. Doesn't seem like that's the answer. So this one, I think my process could be improved a little bit because I only found knight g2 once I got here. I kind of played this like on a high likelihood that this was the correct path, but if I was really, really doing it the way I'd like to in a game, I would have seen knight g2 before getting here. And I didn't do that when I was solving this. So fortunately, knight g2 is the right way. King f2, take, here, push, here, here. So both sides queen, and I think this is where the problem stopped, like right around here. But yeah, I was continuing this further, queen d2. And I saw that the king did have to go to g1, because if king f3, I think knight here, check, king here, and then we check here, and we're going to get to h5 next move, and that'll be mate on either king h4 or king h3. Note the knight controlling the g2 flight square. So you can't go there. And if king f1, knight check here, king here, that's mate. So king g1. And here I was speculating that I thought just knight e3 should win, because it threatens this. White has some checks, but it looks like our king can escape them. I did see that h4 is maybe possible. And the queen is controlling the g2 square, but it just feels like it should lose. Yeah, in fact, there's close to forced mate here. How do we do this? Queen e1, king h2, queen e2. King h3. Yeah, then the queen f1 followed by knight g4. So that should be working. Yeah, here, this, check. But there's this. No, I just said that right here, and then this. Yeah, that's a mating pattern. And if here, we can check this way, and then knight g4. Yeah, so I wouldn't have been totally surprised if the module had made me go further than that to fully establish that line. But I think it ended somewhere right around here after we both queened and queen d2. Okay. What other problems? That one was nice. That was the black capturing on d4 and white playing e5. That's a useful motif to remember, a queen landing on g6. That one was pretty straightforward. Yeah, this one also I think straightforward once you see the strength of queen d5 and taking that rook. And this last one was nice, involving move orders, the stalemate. Okay, and we see the times. That last problem took me 8 minutes, so that one took me the longest, it looks like. Yeah, otherwise, I think pretty decent. This one took me a while, almost 7 minutes here. I did get that one wrong, but I already explained. I tried to salt my wound on that one, but in reality, I just made a bad assumption there. I didn't calculate rook b7 at all, which was the winning move. Okay, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks if you stuck around for the whole thing. Tactics should be part of your study regimen if you're a serious chess player. And in addition to doing online trainers, I think it's important that you also do problems out of books and set up problems on a physical board and try to visualize the solution. And again, focus on solving for accuracy. Don't worry so much about the time, but I think the 10-minute hard cap on a problem is a good rule of thumb, especially if you're a tournament player. And if you have any questions, let me know in the comments. I'll be happy to answer. So thanks, guys, and I'll be back again soon. Bye.